This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 242.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. So, sales engineers don't work in vacuum, and neither do salespeople. So, I figured it'll be good to have a salesperson and an SE on the call at the same time. And so, I had Mike Grego and David McCulley from Proverity. So David has been on the show a while back. It was the show about proof of concepts and encroachment. I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes below. And it was interesting conversation because I wanted to see how, this is an exact conversation of how SE and salespeople work together on a discovery call, on a demo, or whatever it is. And it was interesting to see them work together as well here. And we touch on a lot of topics, but mainly on, hey, what does a salesperson look for in an SE? What does an SE look for in a salesperson? How can we work together as a sales team? How can we improve together and all that stuff? So I thought it was an interesting conversation, and hopefully you'll find it interesting as well. So check it out below. And I want to thank Mike and Dave for coming on and just being open about everything. So it was a great conversation. Let's just jump into the show. How about that? Mike, Dave, welcome to the show. How you guys doing?
Doing great. It's great to be here.
Excellent as well.
Well, it's good to have you. Dave, this is your second time on this show. First time we talked about POC encroachment. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. And I got a lot of good feedback. People are saying that they learned a lot from that initial interview. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Mike, since you're the first time on the show, can you introduce yourself to the folks listening?
Sure. Mike Griego, based out here in California. I had a 18-year career or so in high-tech sales, IBM, storage tech, bunch of been VP of sales, global companies, as well as companies that just building teams or established teams. And then the last 20 years, been really working as a founder and consultant trainer for MXL Partners, which works with companies all around the globe driving sales effectiveness. And had a chance to work with Dave and the Proverity team for some time here, helping build that organization as well.
Nice. Well, it's good to meet you. And Dave, just a short introduction about yourself.
Sure.
People can go back and listen to that one,
Yeah.
the first one, if they don't remember.
So again, my name's Dave McCulley. I've been a sales engineer in both an IC or leadership capacity for over 30 years now. So I've been intimately in this space.
Nice. And I have to admit, when we talked the first time, in my mind, I always thought that demo belonged right after the discovery call. And through our conversation, I learned a lot that a demo could be anywhere in the sales cycle. It's just, it will serve a different purpose and it'll be used in different ways. So that's something I learned from our last call. I'm looking forward to learning something new as well. No pressure in this call. So you guys have been working together for a while, and you've been in the sales industry for a long time. So I'm going to ask each of you separately. Mike, what do you think makes a good salesperson to begin with?
Great question. Question that's asked a lot. And the question I've asked when I was kind of building, driving teams, and even now when I work with a lot of companies, I really think you need to look at an environment that the person's being hired into. But essentially, we're looking for people that have the right type of level of experience in an industry, so they have some content domain expertise. That's always a plus. Also, some general industry or sales background, so they've done some type of sales, whether it's inside sales or outside. So you look for, depending on the environment, you're looking for either an inside salesperson or outside. You want some level of experience, or you're hiring college age kids right into a new career. So given that, you will then look for what are their kind of achievements, or what they've done. And so I often will look for things that indicate that this person has high levels of drive, that they're self-motivated, that they're sharp and ability to kind of understand new technology or whatever the products they're selling. also with good communication skills. And those are developed skills. You can develop that. But finally, ultimately, I would say basic characteristics are they have drive, they have a competitive spirit. They're not afraid of competition, because sales is all about kind of being exposed and getting it done. And finally, that they have the glass is half full, as opposed to glass is half empty. So they're somewhat of an optimist. When they get knocked off at the knees, they can pick themselves up and don't go into the fetal position. They can just get up and go get them again, because that happens a lot in sales. So you're looking for those types of traits. A lot of things are teachable. Some things are innate, but with a good product and a good opportunity, those types of people can be very successful.
So, and you're like, how do you know someone has? It's not easily quantifiable if someone has drive, competitive, or doesn't go into the fetal position, because I do that every once in a while.
Well, there are some tests you can take that give some assessments of that. But outside of that, you can tell by looking. You got to be careful with the resumes, because people can camouflage a lot of things. But I often will look at their background and look at track record. Nothing speaks louder than track record. So if they've been, even if they've been, not that all athletes make better salespeople, that's been proven false. However, when someone's been some competitive environment, whether in school or at the college level, you can tell that they're not afraid of competition, and they know how to be coached, and they train, and there's some level of discipline and rigor and following set kind of protocols and process. That tells you something. How they perform, it's not about being a superstar athlete, but you look at school performance or academic performance, or if they've been in the sales world for several years, you can actually be really clear and deliberate on what their performance records and stack rankings have been. So people that have been continuously successful, that tells you something about their ability to adapt to a situation and then continue to rise to the top.
Isn't everybody always successful on resumes anyways?
Well, yeah, but that's why you got to ask good questions and drill down into it. So look at references, and you find out when things are a little fuzzy in terms of their numbers or performance. You could probably suspect that there's something's being hidden. But when people are bold with their accomplishments and you support it by references, you realize the guys are superstars.
Okay. So you don't take it on face value. You actually ask questions, which is
you got it. I mean, like I say, resumes are an art unto itself. So no, I don't believe resumes at all.
Dave, what do you think makes a good SE?
So Ramsey, this is a loaded question, right? There's I'm gonna say high level fundamentals, and then there's I'm gonna say industry, vertical, technical specific challenges, right? So it all depends on what kind of organization you're in. I say at the high level, at the global level, I'm looking for individuals that are likable, good teammates, right? Folks that can, both relate with their selling partners, can relate with me as a leader, and can relate with my customers. Which a lot of times this trait can be often overlooked because we tend to go right after the tech, right? Do they have the chops? Do they have the ability to learn tech quickly? I like soft skills. That's me personally. If I know they've learned, they have a good references and good background, as Mike referenced, then I know I can teach them what I'm selling. But I need to make sure they have those other aspects. At the end of the day, SEs are part of a sales team, right? So I need to know they have those soft skills, those teaming skills, and those likability skills.
Okay. I mean, when we talk about SEs, we take technology and we just assume that they have to know that to begin with, but it doesn't mean anything if we can't explain anything. So going back to you, Mike, what is it that you're looking for in a sales engineer partner?
I always say there's nothing better than finding an SE that has what I call a sales orientation. And that is they understand what the role is and what we're trying to do. And that is we're trying to move a deal forward. We're trying to get a deal done and get it done. And so they have a tendency to want to lock up and sync with the salesperson as a team to advance the ball downfield, as opposed to an SE that may be very, very good and competent with excellent domain expertise and technical skills. However, they can't see past the technology, and therefore they might have something missing in the conversation with the customer, and they miss some communication cues or some dynamics in the conversation. And so that's why I say it's a sales orientation. Like for instance, like a Dave McCulley is a perfect example of someone who's been around enough that he knows how to engage in a sales call. As a salesperson working with a guy like Dave, you can almost have this dynamic tag team effect in a sales call. You almost know what each other is going to do. That's a beautiful thing when a sales exec and a good SE with a sales orientation can read the room and read the dynamics of a call.
One of the biggest things I see SEs complain about are salespeople. Like, what's the most common complaint SEs have? Salespeople. What is the most common complaint that you see salespeople have? Hopefully, it's not SEs.
I wouldn't say it's SEs, because you can manage the SEs in that, the ones that are, dare I say, showable, that you can actually take on a call and control. That's a great thing. The thing that's really the worst part of a sales situation is, it's a lot of things outside of an SE, but it's your territory, it's a product, it's the quotas, and those are a bunch of things that people gripe about from the sales side. But ultimately, if you're teamed with a good SE, someone that you can tag team together and you think alike, you can work together. It has to be that good teamwork is what you're looking for as a sales exec with an SC team.
Nice. Dave, I turn it over to you. What are you looking for if you were to have a hand or a say in hiring a salesperson? What would you be looking for?
Well, you can already tell me and Mike agree heavily on this topic. Yeah. So I've worked with a lot of different sales reps throughout my career. There are what I like to say two main classes. Now, there are obviously elements, but there are those individual reps that tend to treat their SEs more like a tool, like a stapler or a calculator, and then Dave, fly in and do this, and then I'm out. And then there's others like Mike, who see me as a collaborative selling partner, or I'm engaged in everything, right? That's my preference. Now, this is going to collide with one of the big topics in the SE industry of, do you go to a pooling model, or do we go to a direct selling model where you're doing a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio, right? By me making this statement, you can already tell I lean against pooling, right? Because I like those relationships. I tell my SEs that have been in my organization, you need to know your business like a rep knows your business. You need to know what accounts are in your pipeline, what deals you're working, how you're making your money. You need to be a little bit financially driven, and you need to be one willing to compete, as Mike mentioned earlier. That's what I like to see, because I'm a fan of a selling team. I've seen more success in those models in my career personally than being flown in to, do a demo and then fly out. So that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Did you want to add anything to that, Mike?
No, I absolutely concur. It's like I was told Dave, it's very much like a marriage. I think you got to know each other, get along, and have a plan toward moving things downfield in a way that works. So it's a very collaborative effort.
I would say it's more like an arranged marriage, and as with I don't mind. So
I agree.
Yeah, I wrote a blog for Vivid that pretty much discusses the 1-on-1 versus pool, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Dave. 1-on-1 or 1-to-2 is much better, but there's also a limit of becoming 1-to-10, and you go back to losing everything. Now, I think the difference between you, David, and like some new SE is that they don't know what they're doing. So, Mike, if you have a brand new SE working with you, and you mentioned about controlling the SE, I like to think of unleashing the SE to do their work. How do you get that SE to know exactly that arranged? Like, how do you guys work together with someone new and build that relationship to become what you and Dave have?
Yeah, it may be similar to even sales exec working with an inside sales rep partner that's maybe tag team in some aspects of the territory, or with some application specialist or some other subject matter expert that you need to bring in and groom for your accounts and situation. Same with the SEs. Hopefully, they're going through their program training or learning how to be competent in what they do, whether it's do demos of various iterations or kind of drive a POC process. They may be junior, but those are all teachable skills, and I've seen green SEs develop into very, very competent senior SEs. So along the way, I think the salesperson has to be patient with them, kind of know what you're dealing with, quickly assess that, oh boy, this person's green. I'm not going to throw them in the deep end necessarily on this call. We're going to manage it and we're going to control it. So in a sense, thinking like if it's a younger person, junior person, I think like a big brother. I'm going to help them so that we look good in the call. And if I see a problem in this person not getting it or not developing, then I got to talk to leadership on their end and say, look, either I need another SE or let's work on this, or they need some development.
The one thing I see, you mentioned training for SEs. There isn't any. Most SEs have to learn on their own. So I guess my question to Dave is, if you have a brand new SE on your team, how do you provide the training or support that is needed to actually be a partner to your sales counterpart?
It is true, Ramsey. I've only worked for one company throughout my career that really forced SEs to be part of the sales training with sales reps. They did not break them apart. I think me being part of that organization really helped my maturity as a sales engineer and as a selling professional, right? Because it's made me a stronger salesperson. I think when new folks come on board, to me, it's a couple of things. I obviously have milestones. I want you to be able to demo by a certain point, pitch, understand how to get technical validation. But in order to do all of that, you also need to understand your business, as I mentioned earlier. So it's time spent with your rep. It's communication. If I'm not talking to my reps every day, something's not right. If not once, multiple times, right? Because it's just not, me getting prepped for a customer. Like I said, it's understanding the whole business and strategizing. And sales is not consistent. So we're always adjusting and trying new things. It's a bit of trial and error in a lot of ways. And then when you're going to do that and do that well with your selling counterpart is constant communication, just to strategize and try these new things.
Okay. I guess the question now is for both of you, whoever wants to answer it. What do you do if someone's not advancing at a level that your expectation, or maybe your expectation, Mike, is different than Dave's expectation? Mm-hmm. How do you manage that? This says he's not advancing to my expectation, but Dave's okay with it.
Well, I would say it is the communication. And if I start to see little hints or red flags about the effectiveness of the SE, either in working offline directly with me or with the sales team, or it's obvious in a call or something went off in a call, there's an opportunity to prep before the call and then debrief. I think it's important to say, hey, by the way, when the customer said this, I noticed you jumped in with this and this. I tried to reel this back because, so you talk about, so they understand your style and what you're looking to do. You can help, and in a sense that's train or develop, but help kind of morph them into how you can work together by prepping before and then talking about it right up, fresh on the heels of a call. Mm-hmm. And then next time you hope that person, works it. What I find mostly is SEs are sharp and bright people. Otherwise they wouldn't be in these jobs. And so typically it's a matter of them kind of understanding the dynamics of working with that rep. And or I think the rep has to kind of adjust, see, look, this person is really heavily emphasized in this area. I'm going to leverage that. So I think there has to be some good reading by the AE. So if you're a salesperson that just, one size fits all, you don't have any nuance to you, that's a problem. And I'm sure Dave's run across those types. Yeah. And I tell you, as a nuanced salesperson, I think I could probably work with any type of SE and realize I can take some to a limit, but I can still work with it because most SEs are workable and pretty competent.
It's funny you say that. I was working with a salesperson maybe a year ago, and they had an SE who is not very social. Doesn't have the social interaction, but is a great technician.
Yeah.
Except the salesperson wanted him to do all the social stuff and less of the technical stuff.
Yeah.
And he's basically using it against his strengths versus towards his strength and compensate for each other.
That's a miss. That's a miss on the salesperson's part to not read that.
Yeah. So one question I always get from brand new SEs is they don't know when to interrupt the salesperson if they're in a meeting room. The way I see it right now, we're in a meeting room. A salesperson takes 30 minutes, asks all their questions, and then turns to their SE and says, "Do you have any questions?" And then the SE asks for 30 minutes, and that's the end of the conversation. Instead of it being a tag team and having conversations, is there something you can practice where a salesperson can pause for an SE to come in, or how does it work?
Yeah, I think when you work with the senior reps, you get it. I mean, at the end of the day, I think as SEs, we have to understand one thing. The rep owns the account. They're the opportunity owner, right? They get the hit. If they lose the deal, I'll feel it too as well, but they're ultimately accountable. So they ultimately own it. So with the stronger reps, as SEs, sometimes it's hard, but sometimes you got to sit back and relax and let them run the show. And then you're going to know, like when something comes up, they're going to look over to you. You just got to be ready, right? Which one of the big skills, which you can lose as an SE, is that means on calls, you need to be paying attention all the time, right? You need to be engaged on that call. I can't be off trying to, multitask. And then Mike say, "Oh, Dave, can you elaborate on that topic?" And I'm like, "Oh, what was that topic we were talking about?" So there's an element where you need to be on, you need to be engaged, and you'll need to learn how to get rid of the distractions on those calls. But ultimately, the rep, I think, is in charge. I let them take lead, and I'm there to support them whenever they need.
So is it also, go ahead, Mike, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was going to say on that point, exactly. I use the term of the rep is really the quarterback in the deal. And it's understood that they got the ball and they're calling the shots, and a good quarterback will make the audibles, and good quarterback knows how to read defenses, and they know every position and what those blocking assignments are on the play. So in a sense, they got the ball and they can do that. They're like a head coach on the field or offensive coordinator. A great rep is a great quarterback. A great SE is a great skilled player, tight end, wide receiver, anybody that you can kind of riff with. But the way to control it, though, and I've had to do this, I'll tell you a quick story on. It wasn't an SE per se. It was an analyst, but it's equivalent of an SE of a technical skill set brought to a call. Yeah. And what I noticed with this person, they were so competent and sharp that sometimes they would just go off on meetings, and they couldn't control them. And they didn't have they just one thing got rolled, and they just went off, and they couldn't control themselves. So I had to reel this person back in several times. After about 2 or 3 times of observing this, on the way to a call, I actually said this to a person, and they took it well. We had some fun with it. But I said, "Listen," I said, "here's the deal. I love you, man. You're awesome. You're great. Keep it going. But here's the deal. Here's what's going to happen in this call. If you see me sitting back, crossing my legs and leaning back, keep it going. Just keep it rolling and doing good. However, if I lean forward, I put both feet on the ground and I lean forward, I want you to shut up. I just want you to cut it right there, okay?" And he goes, "Oh, okay. And what it was is this person had a blind spot. As brilliant as they were, they had a blind spot. And I think sometimes people who are technically gifted have blind spots. So it's up to a person to help them. And this person got it. And he started, during the meeting, he'd look over at me and he could kind of see what was going on. We were a tremendous tag team. But that's an example of helping manage somebody without, public humiliation, but just working with them. And it really helped round that person out.
That's so in the past, we've had to kind of figure it out. Like the salesperson pauses for 2 seconds, we jump in, but I might be interrupting them. They might not be happy about me jumping in. So just having that body language kind of signals, like do this with your ear or something. That's pretty cool. It's very obvious. David, do you have a trick like that, or?
Yeah, well, I think I have a topic similar to that. One of my best reps I worked for, he was great at, teaching me items and always came up with good one-liners. we as sales engineers, we like to help the customer. Like we want to just pour our hearts out and do everything we can to help the customer out. And then, but we lose sight by the fact that we're in sales. And I've done it a couple of times where we're doing our thing. We're down the sales cycle. We're in a call and the customer says, yeah, this is going to work for me. I'm going to buy this product. But as sales engineers, we just continue to throw up and can talk. And then we introduce other things and says, oh yeah, you know what? Now I want to test that too. And now my rep's giving me the death stare. It's like, we just had this deal won. Now, because you kept on going, you've introduced new items, new tests. Now we extend the sales cycle. So we went from a decision to now, by accidentally trying to be, really helpful to the customer, we've actually done some mild damage by extending the sales cycle. So it's learning with those little tricks, like when the customer gives you a yes,
shut up.
So
let me ask you this then. Maybe we can switch the way we see it. Was it helpful to the customer that you kept going?
Was it helpful to the customer? Yes, but did it have to be helpful at that time? Could I have closed the business and still provided that help down the road? Right? Because, in our business, it's all about hitting numbers and hitting them on time. So I don't want to break one of those rules of the time, right? If one deal slips, it can, that can affect a team. It can affect the whole division and, ultimately a company number for a quarter, just because I didn't shut up.
Well, I would argue that maybe you didn't help the customer. I would say because you delayed them from making a decision, that could have been a disservice to them at that point in time.
Could have
been. So the way I like to think about it, when we like to help customers, but sometimes helping the customers is shutting up and helping them make a decision versus solving all their problems today.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that gets to kind of what's the role of this whole selling effort. Is it to help the customer make a decision on something that's obviously going to try to help their drive efficiencies or lower costs or be just a better machine? And so if we prolong that, we're not helping the customer. However, the natural tendency, though, of the customers is to look for more information. So that's why you got to be careful. Even sales guys, I tell them, we have to, when you do discovery, we want to get to pushing the product, getting for the demo, getting a quote out. We want to tighten that and move that quicker, and the customer will pull us into that. But we have to really be careful we don't run too quickly down the sales cycle process. We have to ask the right questions and do better discovery, and we're going to have a better deal if we do. So there's that rub. The customer wants information; they'll suck it up if you're not careful. Same with the demo or with the technical stuff.
So Mike, in your view, what's the role of an SE in the discovery?
Well, I'd love to have a good SE in the discovery. Again, rep is the quarterback, and the rep and the SE understand what they're trying to accomplish in a discovery call. And that is, we maybe even have a preset list of questions that we need to understand to fully qualify, let alone kind of drill into the application use cases and such. So in a well-oiled machine, both the SE and the AE know what they're trying to do in that call, whoever's whether it's one-on-one Zoom or whether it's a meeting full of people. So it's orchestrating that and then asking questions and moving through a disciplined process of questioning and probing and uncovering all you need and teasing out where you're going to go. Hey, let me ask you this. We want to show you something, but I want to clarify before we don't show you too much. But let me ask you this, and boom, boom, you're drilling down and the customer works with you. But then reading it, you don't want to, it's not playing 20 questions with the customer. It's reading the dynamics of it and then setting up the next meeting. And so that's, and a great SE, it's like, hey, Dave, what about you? Why don't you might want to drill down into that area. And then Dave knows where we're going and he knows how to then drill into that area. So it's back and forth. It's almost like a orchestrated, dance.
So you mentioned like you debrief before the call. You kind of gave your analyst tips of when to talk, when not to talk. What do you prepare beyond just the strategy of like, if I lean forward, shut up. If I lean back, what do you guys work on preparing before calls with your customers?
That it will vary based on how long people are working together or how experienced they are. if Dave and I had a call in 10 minutes, he and I could do it in about 2 minutes. And it'd be like, hey, here's what we're going to do, because we know what the sequence is of what we're trying to do. If it's a big call and I'm working with a new SE, or I may want to the day before, or a couple hours before, set aside the time, just, hey, let's just chat about this, and maybe even budget a half hour to kind of work it through what we're going to do.
Dave, do you have anything? Do you look for anything else in the prep call, or was that it?
No, I mean, a lot of times we'll get on and it's, we've been through this quite a bit and we've been pretty repetitive. So we're always, looking for new angles. A lot of times it's getting on LinkedIn and finding out who the players are, what companies. Believe it or not, one of the biggest things we find in our industry is have I worked with this industry or know this guy in the past, or have someone connected to him, because those things on a call come up. It's just part of that relationship building and connecting people and networks. It has a lot of weight when it comes to the initial start of that call. If I know somebody that we both know and we highly respect, those walls just come down and selling gets easier, right? So it's a little bit of looking for that.
Just quickly about like leaning forward and leaning back. Right now we're in the virtual world. So is it just you send someone a text, you tell them like, be quiet now, I want to talk, or?
Oh no, do not text me while I'm on a call pitching, because I like you said, I'm running a Zoom call. I've got presentations, demos. There's no way I'm managing a phone, right? So
how do you? Go ahead.
So similarly, right? So what I've learned to do here is what I try to do, and I don't always do it, but as I'm presenting my slides, a lot of times after each slide, I will pause and say, any questions, or are you clear on that slide? And it's not necessarily for the customer to give me the response. It gives Mike that opening to come in. So if he's hearing something I'm missing or I didn't catch, he can come in at that point and he can, put some emphasis on maybe a value statement that the customer was inquiring about that I kind of missed.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
And I would say, given the Zooms, or even the WebEx or Teams type of things, technologies we're using today, it's you end up with not everybody is dialing into the chat or even those kind of notes. So like Dave, some people like, don't bother me with any distractions. I'm focused. So you got to respect that and understand that. It is about understanding going into it, the prep to it, and then like Dave says, there are things like that you could do and say, hey, let me pause right there. Any questions on what we've been talking about so far, and then it opens it up for someone to get some.
The tricky part is when you have someone who's like Dave, fully focused, but unlike Dave, doesn't pause, and someone's trying to jump in. That becomes an interesting problem.
I had to practice it, Ramsey. When I first was once we went full online, and I'm not meeting in front of customers anymore, live. There are some tricks and tips you can do in Zoom, but it does take a bit of practice, because pausing, I'm just, I'm watching the clock trying to get through material, and, depending on how long the discovery call took, my 45-minute demo may have just got chopped down to 20, right? And I've heard the key values that the customer wants to see. So I'm trying to get that into the demo. But yet I still gotta make sure I'm letting the customer in.
Those are controllable, those are teachable things. And I think just with a couple, particularly with, I think in an enterprise space, people are pretty astute. And I think once you see a couple of things that maybe go off a little bit, just having a good, fair, kind of gracious conversation with somebody, say, by the way, offline, you don't have to make it a big deal. I noticed that it was you just went on and on. You need to reel back on that. Mm-hmm. And maybe you have to say it a couple times, but do it in a way that builds relationship, but helps teach people.
Yeah, that's a good way. Like, communication is kind of missing a lot of times between people who get pissed off at each other. So I agree with that. Well, let me tell you this. Is there something, let me ask you this, I guess, for you, Mike, is there something NSE have done that's just driven you nuts, and no matter how many times you've told that person not to do it, they keep doing it?
Not just SEs, the other people in life, but if you want to focus on SEs, I would say what I've learned with SEs is I do see sometimes they reach their limits in what they can do, and they're not either teachable or they're going to stay in their lane on some area. And I've got, therefore, a choice to make. What am I going to do with this? Am I going to just work with it, or am I going to resist it, fight it, force it? No, I got to live with it. I got to work with it in a way that's ultimately going to help us show well and move the ball downfield. So I think it's the onus is on the rep. And likewise, I'd say the onus is on the SE, even working the other angle if they see things that they don't like. You got to work with it. You work, speak, communicate, try to adjust it. So I would say there's never been to a situation where I kind of say, forget it, I never want to work with that person. I think everybody ultimately is workable. You just have to know the limits. And also I'm into development. I'd love to see, it's almost like raising children, not that I think of SEs as children, but anybody, I'm looking at how they can be helped and advanced in development, because sometimes you shed a little light on something and they realize they didn't have that blind spot, and then suddenly they're better in their job. I'm into that.
Nice. All right. So we're about to move on to the not so fire round. I want to make sure that, is there any questions you wanted me to ask that I didn't?
I say this has been going great, Ramsey. Keep
No, I
firing.
think it's covered good stuff.
Cool. So usually I have 4 questions. I ask one guest, but because we're 2 guests, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Usually I ask, what do you think is your superpower? But switching it up a little bit, Mike, I'm going to ask you, what do you think is Dave's superpower? And then Dave, you for Mike.
Well, in answer to that, Dave's superpower, I think Dave is such an experienced guy, and I saw this the first time I heard him in a meeting. Showed me that, okay, experience, competence, good communication skills, good technical chops. As I've learned more about Dave over time, I see that he was raised well, he was trained well, he was in an environment where he got good foundational training. So now they can connect the dots as to that's why he's so good and kind of flexible. So I think the superpower is that Dave is got the goods from a package. He's the full package, technically and intelligence and sharps and communication wise across in front of any kind of customer situation, and he can kind of read it. So that's a beautiful thing. So I'd say superpowers, he's the full package.
Okay. Dave, were you expecting that answer, or were you expecting something else?
No, thank you, Mike.
Okay. So Dave, go ahead. Time to compliment Mike.
So, Mike is just, he's really just solid, well-rounded. But I think for me personally, one of the things that Mike from a sales perspective is his listening and how he listens, right? He's just a great communicator. And when I have issues and I bring things up with Mike, he not only does he listen, there are a lot of reps out there that can't listen. And when they listen, they're hearing you, but they're not listening. Like Mike really takes it in, and Mike has got this great ability to process it and make it feel like, I'm being heard. Not that I feel like, I really believe I'm being heard. And then he's just the same thing, his experience and maturity and his understanding of sales, and then putting almost any challenge in front of him, how he can just, kind of break it all down and simplify it and help find solutions going forward. I think that's one of Mike's best superpowers. A lot of times SEs working with sales folks don't get that experience.
My sales folks end up being writing emails when I'm doing demos with customers. So yeah, I would agree with that assessment. So if I were to ask you what you think your own superpower is, would it be different from what each other said?
I would say probably yes.
What would it be then?
I've always thought one of my strengths as an SE is my ability to adapt quickly. I mean, and that's one of the things I tell a lot of SEs. This is not a position to get stuck in a rut and just to get into repetitive motion and think there's one way to skin a cat here, that it's a little bit of a MacGyver role, and you need to be able to adapt quickly. And I think that's one of the things I've learned to do over the years. So I probably would have gone in that direction. if I were to describe my superpower.
I think Mike did say you're flexible. Like I think that was one of the things that he mentioned, that part of being your superpower.
I think Dave wanted me to say something about his charm and good looks.
I think we all want that.
Now I know he would be lying.
So, Mike, what do you think what is your superpower?
Well, I think he was somewhat in line with some things, and I think it comes from just from years of experience, and I think, you know, for me, as I kind of connect the dots with me, I early in my career as a college kid, I did a door-to-door sales job for 3 summers. That was just nuts, but really disciplined me and mental mindset, toughness, and building that kind of character and driving kind of discipline and rigor in whatever I did. So I found that was so ingrained in me. And I think I calculated by the time I was 22 years old, I had talked to 10,000 Mrs. Joneses in their homes. It was just crazy. So it put that in place with, like, in a sense, no fear. Nothing can hurt me. I get it. I'm no fear. And also, I mentioned, I wrote, it's my second book. The first one was 42 Rules to Increase Sales Effectiveness. This one is No Excuses, a better way to sell. So part of my thing, I think, is not only no fear, but also no excuses. Just let's get it done. Let's work it, and kind of fight through things no matter what. Do it with grace and kindness. However, let's get it done, and no excuses, and work and find solutions. So that's kind of the other element. It was related to what Dave said.
Okay. How long did it take you to write the book, out of curiosity?
The first book was about 9 months, and this one still has legs. 42 Rules, gone through a couple editions. Very disciplined in how I wrote that one and what the publisher was looking for in terms of it works for everybody, from senior leaders, investors, all the way down to CEOs and rookie salespeople. This one is just this one on steroids. I took everything very, very rigorously. It took me a year. But I've already been teaching it with a lot of companies and private equity firms and such in high growth sales teams for the last 10 years specifically. So it's just capturing all that in a rigor and discipline, from everything people would need to do, from opportunity management all the way up to, you know, communications and all that. So that took me a year, and this book came out in May.
Wow. Okay. And so Dave said one of the great things about you is listening. How do you think I find listening does not come innate to most people. Did it come innate to you, or did you have to work on it? If so, how?
I think the listening, one of the things I started to think through, and I studied all the books back when I was first starting my consulting business, 20-something years ago. I went back and read all the books, the Miller-Hyman strategic selling, the spin selling, and all that stuff. I'd been through all that training, solution selling, and of course then the Challenger stuff came out, and Sandler, and all that stuff are just variations on a theme. But often what I realized, what really makes great salespeople, is how they effectively have a process by which they ask questions and then move through the probing into conversations. And what I realized, I started to connect the dots in my own personal life. So you end up with how I listen and talk to my wife. My wife and I, we just celebrated our 43 years.
Congrats.
But I would say it took me about 10 years to figure this out, as I started to kind of understand this, that when Debbie says something, I have an answer right away. When it's like a customer, when they say something as a rep, I have something to say right away. What I learned is I need to hold back, and I need to ask questions to probe into, like, well, what's behind that comment? And when you do that in sales, then you end up with better discovery conversations. You do that in a marriage, you end up with a better relationship and a long-term marriage, and better kids come out of it too. So
that's fine. That's something I'm working on, because I realize I'm much more patient and much better human interactioner, I guess, with customers than I am with my wife. And I'm trying to figure out, like, why is it like that? Why
there's parallels. There's parallels to how we interact with people.
Well, I think when we're with my wife, I already own the business, right? Versus with customers, I need to earn the business every time. Okay, so that was question number 1 of the not so fire round. I guess you can tell that's why it's not so fire round. Question number 2 is, what is a major challenge you had to overcome in your career? And Dave, if you want to start.
A major challenge I had to overcome in my career. I'm going to lean in with it's honing those sales skills, right? When I got into this, it's probably not what I was expecting. When I first became an SE, I was an IT guy, and I was, fixing a machine in marketing. And one of the marketing guys said, "Hey, you're pretty good. You're pretty good. We're having a great conversation. I need someone to help, pitch my products in my executive briefing center." No idea what it was. I said, "Sure, come on over." So I had little expectations going into it. So I learned a lot of pitch and demo because that's where I started. And then shortly after, I moved over into sales. And then it's, not understanding, like being a tech guy and understanding tech and talking to folks about technology and problems and challenges, and then shifting over to sales and having literally no foundationals, none of the training that the sales folks should get or get early in their career, literally zero. And then it's learning that on the fly, learning that transition of why the sales side is so important. And I'm a sales engineer, and that word sales means something. So I need to be a selling partner. It's picking up that half of the title, right?
Yeah.
Which was probably the hardest part.
Yeah, I noticed for people coming from IT or from networking, like I am, the first couple of years of sales, like, hey, we want this product, and the question is, how many ports do you want? And as you get better, it's like, all right, why do you want that product? And the whole conversation shifts, and you go from a technical person who's in sales to sales engineer. So I like that. Mike, what about you? What challenge have you had to overcome?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I would say it's almost related to, but on the flip side with what Dave said. I came into sales just happy you can find a sales job after coming out of grad school, but I knew I wanted to be in a dynamic kind of sales environment. So I got in with IBM, and I was on a fast track there. But I was an English literature major in college, so I was not a technical guy at all. However, I quickly realized, being in an environment where a lot of my peers were engineers and all that I needed to study this stuff. I needed to be competent. And I made a determination very early in my sales career that I wanted to be that rep that could actually make a standalone call and not have to have my SE with me, hand holding me technically. Now, I didn't need to be able to be that deep, but I needed to be deep enough to be dangerous, is how I looked at it. So I just needed to study. I needed to study things that I didn't typically even enjoy, but I needed to be competent across computer subsystems and storage and all this stuff, so that I can be competent to be dangerous. And that really served me well, because it was hard, but I needed to kind of work that. So that was a challenge I think I overcame, because being a technically adept salesperson is really good. That combined with the sales-oriented SE, it's a beautiful thing.
Nice. All right, the third question of the not so fire round. Is there a book or resource you'd recommend for maybe SEs who are looking to transition into sales? I guess, well, Mike, I'll let you take the lead with that. You already mentioned 2 books.
Well, yeah, and I got to say, I think this one here, I think every SE should read it. I think every sales rep should read it. It's No Excuses, A Better Way to Sell. There's sensitivity to it for people who are on the SE side, as well as system and subject matter experts that are engaged in complex enterprise sales, let alone what salespeople need to do. But I've really kind of taken a lot of experience and inputs over the years, and with clients and helping them, that I've seen a lot of stuff. And I kind of, when you break down, a better way to manage process, a better way to, if you just look at better sales process, better qualification, better sales discovery, territory management, all those rigors get into stuff. And particularly even thinking in terms of Dave, that when it comes to managing sales process and opportunity management, how to execute a good complex sale with kind of an SE's in mind, and how you engage together doing that is the type of thing that's dealt here. But this, I think, covers the full gambit of all things sales. for people who are in leadership all the way down to even inside sales, kind of grooming their career. So that's very self-serving, but that's a good one. In addition to all the classic sales books that we all should have read over the last 20 years.
Okay.
So Ramsey, I'll give you a couple. I have not yet got my signed copy of that, Mike, so I look forward to that. However, I did read 42 Rules, and from an SE perspective, I think it's fantastic. It reads easy. It almost reads like a tech guide, right? And as I flip through it, there's certain rules that I'll highlight, not highlight, and even some of the challenges we get here, I'll make a joke. I'll reference a rule out of Mike's book and say, hey, we're not doing well on this rule, right? So it reads really well. I think from an SE perspective, I mean, I love Chris White's 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineering. Chris also focuses heavily on relationship between AE and SE, which, I mean, we're on a sales team, which is important. There's another one too, I don't know, which is non-related to sales or SEs, which is Crucial Conversations. I don't know if everybody has read that book, but it's
I've read that. I recommend that one too. That's a good one.
Yeah, right. So
I've reread that one. It's
exactly
so
right.
Crucial
So
Conversations.
Crucial Conversations. It's all about basically communication, right? And how to communicate and how humans communicate.
Okay.
Right?
All right. Let's add it to my list. All right. So the last question of the not so fire round is there a habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional life? And whoever can think of one first can go first.
Good one. Ramsey, repeat that again. I want to hear that question one more time.
Is there a habit you're working on to improve in your personal or professional life?
So for me, it's slowing down and listening. Like, in some ways, I want to be more like Mike in that capacity. I'm a New Englander, right? I live in Boston, and man, we talk fast, right? And so we talk fast, and sometimes we don't pause. So when I'm giving a demo and I'm going, I will forget to pause. I will forget to let the customer or my rep come in. So for me, it's trying to slow things down, right? And for me to listen and truly take it in and try to figure out what that customer's real problem is, so I can align it with my solution. So there's an element of that where I'm really trying to set a good tempo or a good pace. And it's been a journey. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and gosh, it's so funny how you're still learning these little tricks and tips and tactics on how to better oneself. I do love the question, but I think for me, it's pace and tempo.
Yeah, no, it is a great question, Ramsey. I would say it's something that working on actively is around relationships, building, and I think even kind of post-COVID, there's I think because we've all kind of gone internal and we don't go out, and I've looked back over the thread of my career in life. There used to be a lot of meetings and Starbucks connections and with people, and then we do less of that, but because we're so busy. And also I've got mission control here, and I kind of just do my thing, and so it gets you isolated if you're not forced to get out. So I'm just being more very deliberate about that, and in determining kind of a circle, I think of concentric circles of friends and relationships, both in the business and in private settings, and expanding from that. And in fact, I got a lunch today with a guy I haven't talked to in a while, and we're going to go off, and I just initiated that. So I'm trying to do some things weekly to kind of reestablish and build on relationships with the deliberate effort. Actually,
that's something I am very much struggling with right now, because every time I want to go take a customer out to lunch, I mean, that's an hour and a half of lunch, maybe 40 minutes of driving. I could do like 4 meetings in that. And in my head, I'm trying to kind of, like, I know the value of lunch is. I know the value of meeting customers face to face is just, quantity over quality, I guess. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out.
It's a challenge. We got to be aware of it.
All right. Well, guys, this was great. And I have a million more questions, but we're at the end of our time. So I look forward to chatting with you again, and we'll see you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramsey.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mike, for coming on. Again, I really appreciate the conversation. Let me know what you think. What are you looking for in a sales engineer or as a salesperson, depending on what your role is? Do you notice what the other person is good at? That's something that we as a sales team should know. Like if my salesperson is good at X, then I'm going to need to be good at Y, or I can let them take that part and I can do something else, and vice versa. A lot of salespeople and a lot of SEs complain about the weaknesses of the other person and not use that person to their strengths. And that's something that Mike mentioned. Use the people around you to their strengths. Don't expect them to do things out of the ordinary. I mean, if they want to improve, great, you can help them improve. But a lot of times there's so many things that people have to do, whether it's an SE or whether it's a salesperson, that asking them to improve in something that you want them to improve in isn't really on the top of their I guess to-do list. So if you like this show, make sure you comment, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and share it with friends and family. And that's pretty much it for me. So I will see you next time. With that, I'm signing off.